Welcome, everyone, to day two of the Elevate AEC Experience. I'm Chad Kleinens, President and CEO of Zweig Group. Hope you were able to join us yesterday. If you weren't, that's fine. Today, we are going to do what I'm calling a State of the Industry deeper dive. So there'll be something new for everyone here. And really, I thought just more casually, we go through some of the data that we talked about yesterday and provide some additional context and present some other data that we didn't have time to in the introduction. And then also we'll follow up here with an Elevate, what I'm calling the 2020 tutorial, and just show you really what's in store for the next 8 weeks. So you can mark your calendars for the things that interest you. So yesterday we kicked off our third Elevate AEC conference. For those of you who have been around for a long time know that it used to be called the Hot Firm Conference. And 3 years ago in Dallas, we launched a new name change, Elevate AEC, to match our Elevate the Industry mission, which we talked about yesterday and really talked about the parts of the equation are performance and purpose. And when it comes to performance, driving performance to elevate the industry, we're in the best position we've ever been in. And today I'm going to look at more of that data and also recognizing we're in a time period here with COVID and some uncertainty ahead, but certainly it's a beautiful day to be in AEC. And we collect a lot of data, which we're going to talk about today, over 2 million data points annually. And that comes from a combination of surveys that we run on every subject you could imagine in running an AEC firm, along with our awards winner data. And then we also have a very recent and actually currently running COVID survey that we will look into a little bit more of those data points. So let's start today by just looking at some of the overall industry performance metrics that came in. Now, this is our 2020 financial performance survey, but we recognize that the collection of data, obviously the data looks into the past. And again, there's a lot of change right now in the industry, but still overall, we're doing very well. The good news is that the industry is operating at historic high levels. Now, we talked about this yesterday. The industry-wide profit margin is now at 15%. And interestingly, for the 30 years that we've been doing research, we considered firms that had a 15% or greater profit margin as high profit firms. So what we did is we could put them in a category and then looked at everything else they were doing. Well, now that the industry-wide median is at 15%, we do wonder, do we have to, push up what high performing firms are defined as? COVID could, of course, correct that. But nevertheless, it's an awesome time because, again, we've never published metrics like this. And you can see the nice climb there, 2018, 2019, and 20. Return on equity is also at historic highs. Awesome to see this at 54.4%. Hopefully we'll be able to maintain that. Something new that we didn't talk about yesterday is the NSR per full-time employee. You can see how it's grown. And we took this all the way back to 2010 and really tracked it all the way through 2020. And you can see this is very strong, even stronger in our hot firms as we presented yesterday. But obviously we're getting very efficient. Also, as demonstrated here, you can see the overhead rate trending down over the last 3 years. And what's interesting, and this is good, but it doesn't mean that these are the firms that aren't investing in overhead. It actually, those overhead investments drive efficiency in the organization that can actually drive your overhead rate down. As we talked about yesterday, that the top 3 investments you can make in your firm to drive growth are marketing, HR, and IT. And so that's marketing and business development, HR, especially wrapped around the employee experience, recruiting, retention efforts, and then obviously IT. That goes way back in the data. And obviously the firms that had made those IT investments were the ones that very clearly had an easier transition back in March when every firm had to go into a COVID mode. And so for those firms that had really overinvested, I would say, above the industry medians in IT did very well. Now, revenue factor has also climbed steadily. We've got the last 3 years here. Now, revenue factor is defined as net service revenue over total labor. This is a much better measure of success and performance in your organization over utilization, because this cannot be manipulated like utilization can. So we encourage our clients to measure revenue factor instead of utilization and really focus on this. Backlog has also grown steadily. You go all the way back to 2012, and this is great to see. A little bit of cooling off in the last metrics that we picked up there, but overall, very strong, very good to see. It'll be very interesting to see how this is affected by COVID. I mean, we've heard from some clients that, their backlog starting to slip, obviously. But again, others, they're saying they've got the strongest backlog they've ever had. So it's a mixture of great stories and not so great. But overall, the industry's doing very well, as we can see from all of these metrics. But there's also challenges in managing a growing firm. We talked about these yesterday, but we'll provide a little bit more context on these today. Obviously, some of these challenges that are the top challenges of principals in AEC firms, they cite as the top challenges in their firms. Some of these obviously are a byproduct of our success and growth and the performance in the industry. But number one, staff recruiting and retention. I said this yesterday. So this has been number one 3 years in a row and counting. And I don't see how this is going to be unseated, even just with what COVID might do. We do not have the graduation rates. We do not have the supply in the labor market to fulfill the projected demand of infrastructure going forward. So recruiting and retention is something that we're working very hard to solve and is largely a part of our Elevate Her program, which we kicked off yesterday at the Elevate Her Symposium, looking to solve this challenge. And it's something that we all have to lock arms and work on together. Number two, business development marketing. It's interesting. This was number one for, I believe, also 3 years in a row, at least when I joined Zweig Group back in 2013. And then I believe it was 2016 or 2017, business development and marketing completely fell out of the top 5. You might ask, why would that be when it was number one? Well, it's because that's about when firms really started getting busy and really started hitting their limits again. And so when we get busy, what do we not do? We don't do as much business development and marketing, at least in a lot of firms. Why? Because we rely on the people who are doing the work to also talk to the clients and deliver on that business development part of the equation. And so it's quite a quandary that we find ourselves in. We're going to actually really dissect both of those here in a moment. Ownership transition has been in the top 5 post the last recession. Coming out of that recession, ownership transition, always a major concern of firms. It got worse during the recession because owners who were planning on transitioning out because valuations dropped during the last recession, they held tight, decided to ride the recession out. But what can you not stop the clock on? That's aging. And so coming out of the recession, some of these senior owners found themselves in a bit of a difficult situation. They had aged quite a bit. Now they've got to figure out somebody to buy them out. And then valuations of firms grew pretty steeply post-recession, which is both a good thing, but it presents a challenge on internal transition, which is what the majority of firms prefer, as we'll look at here momentarily. Communication and time management tied for number 4. Those came into the survey, I believe, last year when we really just saw the wheels smoking on the industry. Lots of firms really busy, increased concern about burnout and examples of actual burnout. And so this is something that is a big problem right now. And COVID's not making it any better. And we've got some sessions that we'll talk about coming up. And in fact, today, Pete Atherton, his session that is at 1 o'clock Central, burnout is a major part of his program, and it's so relevant right now. Number 5, business strategic planning. Nice to see in the top 5. I would say that with the firms getting busy, their long-term perspective comes in, right? Because we want to balance our perspective on the short-term initiatives as well as the long-term strategic plan. But when we get very busy, we tend to get mired down in projects and the demands and all the fires that we have to put out. And so the strategic plan gets put on hold. And so for a few years, I worried about progress in this area. And of course, now here it reveals itself as the top challenge. You must figure out a way to balance your attention on both the short term and the long term needs of the company. And there's uncertainty in that long term right now. And so there's never been a better time for you to spend time on painting that picture or what you believe that picture is going to be and how your business is going to grow and thrive and flourish in whatever conditions are ahead. So let's do this. Let's do a deep dive and really focus, instead of collecting around the award winner data, let's focus on these challenges. And we'll look at both award winner data, which is very recent, and we'll also look at some of the data from the rest of our survey. So it'll give you an idea of what kind of the firm overall, or I'm sorry, the industry overall is feeling, but also the award winner data really is more focused on what the highest performing firms are feeling and how they're dealing with these challenges. So we'll start with recruiting and retention. And again, I said it's the number one challenge in the industry, has been for 3 years and counting, probably going to hold that seat for a while. So we really need to get to work on this, regardless of what the future economy looks like. So in our recruiting and retention survey, which is data 2019, but it actually is published more towards the end of the year. So it's fairly recent data. We're collecting data on this now, obviously for the next publication. So the top challenges that is cited by firms, of course, tied is finding qualified candidates and managing the hiring process. And so both of these areas, obviously the finding qualified candidates, that's an issue. It's going to continue to be an issue in the industry. That's why we have programs like Elevate Her. Managing the hiring process, that being very high, I think, is also because firms are busy. There's multiple people involved and needed to participate in this. We can't just throw this in HR's lap and say, go find someone. This requires engagement from what we call the hiring manager. It may be the senior project manager, it may be the team leader, it may be the department head who needs these people. They've got to be engaged in the process. One thing I'll say about this is that firms often in this industry overcomplicate this process. They get too many people involved. There's too many different interviews. It's like, well, we can't do the interview next week because we have to have 3 other people involved in the interview. And these candidates go in front of a 10-person panel and it feels like a firing squad. So our advice to firms is be very nimble here. Figure out how you can screen the candidates, focus on culture, focus on the cultural fit instead of skills. And so hire for fit, train for skills, it's kind of the saying, and figure that out as quickly as you can and get these people in the door. So many firms have a problem with recruiting and retention because of their own internal process holds them back. And then the others here, managers identifying needs and then competition. It may surprise you that competition is that low. So this, again, just demonstrates that 80% of our challenge may be just our internal approach to recruiting and retention. The average time to fill a job, 60 days, as you can see over there. Obviously, with the more difficult positions, that is much, much greater, some being a year plus, especially if you're looking for executive positions. So this is just shows the average number of open positions in firms by total staff size. And I will just say what kind of sticks out here to me is the 25 to 49 staff size firm. That's really not an anomaly. We see a lot of growing pains in that size firm, lots of opportunities there. And so you can see there, it could be, 10% plus of their total staff is in open positions. So that's pretty significant. And then you can see the rest all the way to 500 plus. This next chart is the staff turnover rate. And you can see it's kind of generally grown since 2016. Turnover is one of those things that's not necessarily a bad thing. And so I think you've got to be careful about comparing yourself to industry metrics and really be clear, and also look at what is voluntary and what is involuntary turnover. The survey, the recruiting survey, also actually separates that out, and you can see that. But you can see it ticked up in 2020 to 13.8%. We've got to deal, obviously, with underperformers and move them out. And if we just have a simple goal of minimizing our turnover, that could work against us. So we have to be very intentional about how we view turnover and deal with turnover internally with our employees. So looking at the awards data, this is where employees in the best firms to work for ranked their firms the lowest. Now, if you weren't able to join us yesterday, just some real quick overview of best firms to work for. So this is the largest employee survey in the AEC industry. This year we had over 12,000 responses. It yielded over 1.7 million data points. Okay, so there's a lot of data. So there's a lot of merit then in these numbers we're looking at. These are not affected by anomalies. These are generally what's happening in the industry. So employees rank their firm the lowest in these areas: frequency of raises and bonuses, compensation for extraordinary effort, and employees' subpar work is addressed. Now, number one is typical. That's not new this year, although it's been made worse by COVID. Number two is also not new to the survey, although I would say it has moved up in importance because, again, let's go back to generally in the industry, firms are busy. So when we're busy, we get very transactional focused, very project, just churn them out the door onto the next project, and really recognizing those stars, recognizing people that have done great effort, even if it's just verbally or through some other simple gesture like an email to the team or a gift card. Those things don't happen as often, right? Because leaders are also busy and we're not thinking about, hey, what do I need to do for this team, this employee who's been working very, very hard? And so again, these areas, if you look at this and you say, how can we as a firm develop strategies around dealing with this, especially number 2 and 3, is fairly, I don't want to say easy, but it doesn't have to be costly. Number one, obviously, it's going to be a function of how you give raises and bonuses and whatever your system is, and honestly, the funds you've got for that, which could be affected by COVID. You could be greatly affected by that right now. Although I will just say this, I've been working with firms that they have actually put holds on their raises and bonuses, even cut their management team compensation, while they're having great years. Again, it's that kind of the fear of the unknown. So there is some prep for that. But hey, it earns the number 1 spot. And again, that's not new. I will really pick here on number 3, employee subpar work is addressed. This has also been growing in the rankings. When we get busy, we tend to relax our standards for recruiting and retention. Okay, on the recruiting side, we just look for anybody that can do the job. So maybe we relax our scrutiny on whether they are a cultural fit. Okay, on the retention side, we also relax our scrutiny on, well, this person may be toxic, they're hard to get along with, they cause chaos, they mess a few things up here and there with clients, but overall they can produce more plan sheets than anybody else on the team, so we're going to keep them on. I would say this is something that's very, very important for you to think about, is those employees who, whether by performance or even just toxicity to the culture, their effect on the team is far greater than any benefit they can provide. And I think we've really got to change our thinking in this industry that, if they're a good performer on projects, that we can tolerate subpar work or subpar interaction with other employees. And I think we've really got to think about this. And we've got to make sure the bar is high and even raise the performance standard. Because I will say, if you will deal with these people, what you're going to notice is that the performance of the rest of the team is going to be elevated. I can't even think of a single example where we have helped a firm confront something like this. They did something about it and they weren't just blown away with how the team responded. So I think that's very, very important. This is something we started last year, and then interestingly, this year there were some changes in it. We said there's been a interest obviously in millennials, and anytime we would do a millennial panel at our previous Hot Firm or Elevate conferences, nearly the entire if it was a breakout session, the entire conference wanted to go to that session. There's just a lot of interest. But the reality is there's tremendous power and energy and intelligence in our younger generation that we're trying to bring on board here. So what we did here is we actually separated age groups and we said, where are the greatest gaps? And so we said, okay, let's just go from 18 to 45 and then 45 and older. And this graphic that's on the screen here shows where the younger generation, the 18 to 45, ranked the firm's lowest on the same issues that the older generation ranked the firm the highest. So the greatest gaps were parental leave, compensation for extraordinary effort, right there we see that. Base salary level of compensation reflects my workload, and firm makes effort to keep compensation competitive. So the thing I'll say about this is, and I said this yesterday, but I'll just really stress it, management's understanding of what the issues are across the firm needs to come from data. You need to listen to your employees. That's the power of the best firms to work for survey. Is it is absolutely the cheapest way to get a comprehensive survey from a third party of your employees' perceptions. And something like this in leadership should build some real empathy for the younger generation who you're trying to keep motivated, because put yourself in their shoes, because you can, because you were their age at one time. We know that without a doubt. Many of these issues were probably something that you were concerned about too. So if we make efforts in these areas, then we are going to then really get a competitive advantage, even on the other best firms to work for. Now, what's really interesting is actually when we swapped the data and changed the perspective and said, where's the younger generation happiest and the older generation least happiest, or at least ranking their firms. Number one, I have opportunities for career growth at my firm. Again, this recognizes and reinforces the importance for a firm to have a growth-oriented strategic plan, because opportunities for career growth are essential, or a byproduct from growth. So growth is essential to creating the career opportunities and that career growth. And so for those firms who say, hey, we like our size, we don't want to ruin our family atmosphere by growing too much, my challenge to you is do not view growth that way. Growth and the opportunities that it gives your employees actually empowers the best part of your culture. Number two is very important. I take the review process seriously and prepare adequately. So the younger generation is saying, this is very important to me. And the older generation is saying, this is not important to me. What's the problem with number two? The problem is that we rely usually on this older generation, those who are in leadership and management positions, to facilitate the review process. So this being number two, and the fact that this is of all of those data points, thousands and thousands of data points, that this earned the number two spot, you should really look at this carefully and make sure that even if the firm's busy, that you are not getting lazy with the review process, because it sends a very dangerous message to those who really seek the feedback, care about this process, and look forward to it. And again, I will just issue this challenge to firms. Again, it's one of those areas where we overcomplicate this process. We bog down our leaders with too many forms to fill out or things to prepare for these reviews. I talk to leaders who say, I dread this part of the year because, for a month or a month and a half, for 6 weeks, it's all I do. We really need to simplify this and really have more of a culture of immediate feedback and in a review process that's easier facilitated than something that's overly laborious or bureaucratic. It's something that happens more and more as a firm grows. So if you are in that position and you're growing, you really need to protect yourself from being too bureaucratic in this process. Management takes an interest in my professional development. We'll talk about this here in a moment, the importance of training and development, opportunities for continued financial gain at my firm. It's great to see this in the younger generation of the company saying, I see these opportunities for financial gain. We really need this, especially if you're committed to an internal transition. We've really got the demand for stock has got to remain strong. And then positive relationships exist among employees at my firm. Rounding out the top 5. So let's go to the gender gap. We looked at this yesterday, but again, I want to talk a little bit more about this today. And so what this says here, we got ranked 1 through 5, and then we've got the little symbols here. Basically, it says where the male symbol is, it says males rated this highest, where females rated it lowest, or at least the gap was the greatest. So you can see 1, 3, and 5, parental leave, amount of paid time off annually, and being comfortable with agreeing with or constructing my superiors were males. But what's really interesting about this is number 2 and 4. Effectiveness of your team working from home and your effectiveness working from home. So females rate this very highly. Males are rating it lower, or at least the gap is the greatest between the genders. This is a very important point to hammer, okay? Because what we're seeing in the other data, and it's both hard data that we're getting through the COVID survey and the conversations we're having with firm leaders, CEOs, they are saying this is working well. The data says it's working very well, okay? So what we've got is we've got to get the entire firm on board, understanding that it's working well, and to fight the tendency that when COVID, which is forcing us to work from home, when those restrictions relax, that we don't go too far back to the way things were, because 2 and 4 are really critical in helping us advance our progress in the recruiting and retention challenge. The number 1 benefit still, I think this is also 3 years in a row, is training and development. And that's great, okay? Beyond the, traditional benefits we used to, rank highly maybe back when you were younger, 401k and different things like that. This is a beautiful thing that the younger generation really craves training and development, because the thing that they really crave is something that benefits the firm. And so the highest ROI, or return on investment, you can make is training and development, because they rank it as the highest or most important to them, and it benefits the firm, benefits the projects, benefits the client experience, benefits every area of the firm. And so here's something we didn't look at yesterday that really kind of drills down into this, and it just illustrates best firms versus all other firms. Is that when asked the question, does your firm offer tuition reimbursement? You can see the best firms to work for higher than other firms. That percentage may not look significant, but it actually is pretty significant if you think about how important this is, and that those firms that are getting on this list and winning this award are doing this more, period. Okay. Related, does your firm reimburse for books and supplies? Also, best firms to work for, higher percentage than all other firms. That's what distinguishes these firms as a best firm to work for. And so think about the policies, the benefits that you have in your firm that then send a message as to what's important to leadership. And when we have things like these policies, then it tells the employee that your highest valued benefit is important to us, right? And so we really got to think about and be creative in how we design our benefit structure, and then also be very intentional about communicating these things, right? I mean, you can quantify this as a dollar amount and put this in an annual statement of compensation that you can send your employees. So just looking at gender distribution in best firms to work for hasn't changed much, but it is slightly above the industry average, 30% female, 70% male. And when I say slightly above, female concentration in best firms to work for is slightly above the industry overall. But what's really good to see is this next graph. It's encouraging to see that the 18 to 35, clearly we are doing a better job in recruiting females into the design and technical programs at the university. I mean, like, it's much better than it was when I was there. So now they're getting out into the workforce. The key here, though, is for us, and the challenge for us as an industry, is to work with academia, make sure that we are really helping advance that concentration in the schools, but then also doing our part as firms in how do we retain a more diverse workforce. Not having policies that makes it harder for the more diverse workforce to stay with us. So what we want to see, essentially, as we look at this graph over and over each year, is we want to see those bars all extending, right? And we want to see that 18 to 35 bar, the magnitude of the red move down to the 36 to 55 and so forth each year. So let's look at marketing and business development. And we've got a poll here I think we'll put up. So the question that we'll start out with is, what is currently the average ratio of marketing staff to other employees? I'd like to hear what you in the audience think it is. So is it one marketing staff person per every 27 total employees and so forth, A, B, C, and D? So go to the poll here. Looking at the progress, great, lots of votes coming in, excellent. Awesome. I'm just gonna watch these votes come in. We're about halfway through the audience here. This is good. Definitely seeing some trends here. Most of you think it's 1 to 43. Okay. All right. Well, let's go ahead and show the answer. Okay. Drum roll, please. It is 1 to 38. And so that is something that is concerning to me. And here is why. Okay, that came back up. I want to get rid of that. So the marketing staff ratio, if we actually go back and look at how this has trended, this is the problem. Okay, going back to what I would say coming out of the recession, 1 to 39, down to 1 to 26, back up to 1 to 38. So what I'm going to do is we're going to reverse this so it actually makes a little bit more sense. So our marketing staff, the percentage of staff in firms in 2013 was 2.6%. And so what did we do? Coming out of the recession, we invested in marketing and business development, right? Okay, fell out of that, challenge in 2016, ironically or coincidentally. Marketing and business development fell out completely of the top 5 challenges of principals, right? So now what's happening? Now we're in a decline, and now we're exactly back to where we were coming out of the recession. This is very concerning to me, okay? Because in this industry, you cannot take your eye off the marketing and business development. It's always got to be consistent, and it must trend with company growth. And what we saw here is that it has not. And if we look at all of those other charts that we looked at earlier, what were they all doing? They were all very nice increase since 2012. The industry's doing well. And by the way, just looking at this graph, there's no anomalies here. I mean, this is clearly what's happening in the industry. It's very accurate. It's very smooth. It's very consistent. So my challenge to you is you've got to staff up on marketing, all right? And especially in bad times. This drives growth. It's the investment that you need to make to keep your pipeline full. It is not the investment that you cut when things go bad. But clearly what we've done here possibly is at least cut our investment staff or our investment in staff since 2016. So very, very concerning there overall. Now let's go to the award-winning data. So those who are producing award-winning marketing, this is a great group to look at. We have abbreviate them as MEA winners. 45% of those who are producing award-winning marketing are what we call fast growth firms. They have grown 20% or greater for 3 or more years and counting, okay? So it's not just 1 year, it's 3 years, right? And then all other firms, those who found themselves in the fast growth sample set, just 29%. So a pretty significant difference there if you look at that, okay? And then also, this is something very interesting. We're always looking for an opportunity to, at least I am, to champion marketing investment from the boardroom all the way to the project teams. Everybody's got to understand the importance of marketing. Well, guess what? Marketing drives profit, as demonstrated by this pie chart. So those who were in higher, very high profit, that's 15% or greater profit margin for 3 or more years counting, was the MEA set versus 57% for all other firms. The industry is doing very well. So of course the difference isn't huge, but here's what is so important is that it is actually higher in the MEA set. And we just started tracking this 2 years ago, and both years, very consistent. So something you can rely on. So we must elevate our perspective of marketing investment in our firms and not view it as every dollar we spend on marketing is a dollar of our bonus that we're giving away at the end of the year. Why? Because of this right here. So there is this thing that I'm just going to call the marketing paradox. Okay. 59% of firms are decreasing spending or have decreased spending in marketing due to COVID. Okay, so that's up to that data is up to really just a few weeks ago. So this says that in response to COVID, 59% have decreased their spending in marketing due to COVID. Now, I recognize some of that could be trade shows. Some of those could be things that are not happening. But nevertheless, that's a really high number, and that really concerns me. So this marketing paradox exists, and it's when uncertainty increases, we look to reduce other areas of uncertainty. Marketing, unfortunately, is a common victim, especially in AEC. The uncertainty of marketing, though, is our own fault. Okay, we do not use today's technology and data analytics, resulting in the majority of marketing efforts are not as predictable as they could be. So in AEC, we find ourselves in a vicious cycle because we have trouble making a case for marketing in the boardroom, largely because we do not have the hard data because we just don't track it. And the reality is we can track it. We just have to spend more time. We have to have the staff to track it. So let's look at the most successful marketing sales strategies. And this is an open response question, so people can write anything they want. So firms are saying direct relationships referrals, number one. Marketing department development, great to see. Number two, that came into the survey this year, new all the way to number two. Delighted to see that. Absolutely, we've got to develop and grow our marketing departments. Networking events, website, social media. Obviously, some of these have been changed by COVID. What's interesting is if we look at the least successful marketing sales strategies, advertising, email, trade shows, direct mail, and then number 5, social media, it's in red because as you'll notice, it's actually on both lists here, right? And it can be, right? Because social media can be very successful for some firms and very unsuccessful for others. And so that's why we had this huge divergence on that item in particular. And I'll just take that a step further and say, hey, I'll disagree with all of these actually. They can absolutely be the least successful marketing and sales strategy, all 5 of those, but they can also be the most successful. If you invest intentionally, appropriately, strategically, these things can be very powerful for you. 82% of MEA firms will spend as much or more this year on marketing this year versus last year. So that sample set there closed, I believe, in April, May. So we were getting into COVID. But hey, that's a great stat. It will be interesting to see what the actual results of that are, because of course we go back to that 59% slide. It was unfortunate to see that. So let's look at the area of ownership transition briefly. So again, major challenge, 70% of firm leaders say they prefer to transition stock internally, okay? Here is a chart that shows what their plan looks like. So 10% say they are currently transitioning. But the problem here is look at the left half of that chart. So over half of the sample set says in between 1 and 10 years. Okay. Let me tell you, the group there, the 12% that's between 1 and 5 years, man, that they have waited too late. Okay. And so we've really got to make sure that ownership transition, we're modeling it way out, and that we understand that, you know, who's transitioning and on what schedule, and that we make sure that we do not wait until too late. Because again, if half of the respondents say they've got to transition in the next 10 years, they better have a model up and running by now. When polled, this is what they cite as how they're going to transition. 63% say they will actually transition internally, 14% ESOP, 7% M&A, and 16% they're not planning. One thing I'll say about this, internal transition's great, but ESOP and M&A are both really good strategies for transitioning the firm. And for those who have maybe waited too late, or the internal transition is stressed by certain things that we have not prepared for, you really need to look at both ESOP and M&A. I'm going to say something specific about M&A. There's something in this industry, and it's weird and unfortunate. Our perceptions is there's something unromantic about, you know, transitioning externally. But the reality is that if you find the right partner, and if you're selling to a firm that can help you transition, that firm can potentially empower your culture, give those career opportunities to those leaders that maybe can't buy the stock themselves, and give them a career trajectory that the firm cannot sustain if they internally transition. So I see some firm leaders overly committed to the point of stubbornness on internal transitions, when you could actually create a better environment for your employees. And it may be actually more romantic to do a transaction through M&A. So let's look at how the hot firms grew over the past 3 years, to just make another point for M&A and how it drives growth, and how growth drives career development. This is the hot firm list. 40% of the hot firm list said they grew through M&A, the other 60% organic. But when we looked at the top 10 firms, which their growth stats are extraordinary, 80% of them grew through M&A. So really makes the case for M&A driving growth. And we know that growth drives career opportunities, culture, all the good things about the firm. So let's look at communication. The number one challenge year after year, at least every year I saw the survey, was communication. Well, this year it was smashed to pieces by work-life balance post-COVID. Okay. And so we really got to think about these things and how they're trending. So trending up, effective communication, you can see these things have trended up over the past 3 years. And that effective communication is one of them. But here we saw the greatest challenges working from home. Post-COVID data, work-life balance, distractions, and loneliness were the top 3, with communication taking the number 4 spot. Where scores plummeted: I feel my job is secure without the threat of downsizing, quality of raises, bonuses, firm's management shows compassion to employees in time of need. These are all kind of obvious byproducts of what COVID did. What's maybe more interesting is where the score soared, which is telecommuting. I feel things are effectively communicated at my firm in the mentoring program. And I pointed this out yesterday, but I just want to re-stress this. Number 2 and 3 potentially helped us get out of the rut of meetings and all of the things that were kind of our ways of communicating, and forced us to pick up the phone and talk to people. I don't know how else number 2 and 3 could shoot to the top post-COVID without something pretty extraordinary happening like COVID. 89% of best firms to work for share revenue data with all employees. Now, this is in contrast to only 22% of every other firm. So again, this is a powerful communication tactic where we are sharing the numbers, not only information, but also the numbers. That is something that's very important to employees when they rank their firms on transparency. So let's look at the last area of the challenges: business strategic planning. Stats on strategic plans basically say, hey, the organization doesn't really know what we're trying to do here, which ties directly to why communication has always been historically the number 1 challenge. 95% of the typical workforce doesn't understand your organization's strategy. Okay, that's 95 out of 100, which means there's a lot of leaders that are in that 95%, which speaks to the second point. 86% of executive teams spend less than an hour a month discussing strategy. And then lastly, and unfortunately, more than 70% of these companies with strategic planning don't execute it. And the reason is they usually don't get the help they need on the front end, and they don't get the help they need on the back end. Okay. If you're going to execute it, you've got to keep constant efforts towards executing it. The reward, firms with a strategic plan are 12% more profitable, and those that execute it are even more profitable. So the case for strategic planning and that investment is absolutely warranted. But here's something that's interesting. 70% of firms that used a formal process to manage strategy outperformed their peers. And so this is something that I think we really need to think about is hey, we can't just all show up to an exotic lake house, do a strategic plan and then put it on the shelf. We really need to have a formal process to manage both the development of and the execution of the plan. Another interesting stat here, only 2% of leaders are confident that they will achieve 80 to 100% of their strategy's objectives, okay? So here's some implementation approaches. Communicate with the entire firm. This does not need to be a secret. Train around the strategic objectives and integrate into meetings, performance reviews, onboarding, etc. And then aid with third-party advisory and or software. I do think this is very important. And actually our newly formed partnership with On Strategy, I'm very excited about this, and their app that helps aid in the execution of the strategic plan. We are going to be doing a session with them, and we'll talk about this here in a moment, where you can learn more. But anything that we can bring to this industry to really aid in our execution is going to make us stronger on the performance side, which we talked about yesterday, that as an industry, we have to perform at the top of our game in order to be more competitive in the global race for talent. So that performance side and that purpose side are both very important. So that purpose side and performance side are both addressed in the next 8 weeks. And what we've come up with, this crazy, big, long Elevate AEC experience. I don't know of anybody that took their 2-day conference and made it into an 8-week experience, but here we are. Lots to choose from, something for everybody, and really only a few hours a week. And you're going to be able to get a lot of amazing thought leadership from the best slate of speakers we've ever had. We'll start by just looking at the different things we have to offer over the next 8 weeks. First of all, our award winner celebrations. You can see here on the screen, all of this information is accessible from our website, but we are going to start out on October 14th with our Courage and Leadership Award winner celebration. We will unveil the 2020 Courage and Leadership Award winner, and then we'll have a panel discussion, Paul Greenhagen and John McAdams, and we're working on some others. Really great panel. So we'll have a celebration video and a panel discussion on what it means to be a courageous leader, and just hear some of the stories from the front lines of previous Courage and Leadership Award winners. Then we're going to go to the Hot Firm Award winners. Again, all of these Hot Firm, Best Firm, Marketing Excellence Awards, we're going to have a celebration video where we're going to acknowledge the firms, have a countdown, and then all of them will be followed by a panel discussion with the top performing award winners this year. You'll hear the tactic and strategies they used. It's going to be very interesting. One thing I'll say is if you have not submitted your footage from your team celebrating or anything that you've done in your firm to celebrate these awards, send those to us. Because we will use those in the development of these award celebration videos. And then finally, the very end of this experience, Thursday the 19th, we're all going to raise a glass to an 8-week experience that elevated all of us, our firms and the industry. We're going to celebrate the rising stars of the 2020 class, and it's going to be a very just a great time to end on a high crescendo. So that is how we're going to celebrate the award winners, both in these ceremonies. And then also we're just going to integrate stories and data points throughout the 8 weeks and the various things that we're going to talk about here. Marketing and business development. If you're interested in learning more about these very important topics, you can see we're going to have podcasting with Randy Wilburn. I call Randy the podcast whisperer. It's amazing what he's done with podcasting. It's amazing what it can do for your firm. He's going to share that starting on October 20th. His session is at 1 p.m. All of the times listed here are central, and I'm not going to like point all of them out, but I put them here in order of, beginning to the end of the experience. I'm going to Charles Pooley with Workfolio, also a new partnership that we formed. They've got some incredible sites and applications that you can use to communicate with your clients. It's something they've been doing for a very long time, but it's new to the AEC industry through our partnership. Charles is going to be talking about transforming project pitches for a new virtual world. Wow, the timing of that could not be better. And their software, which has been around for a long time, is tested, and their client websites have been tested for a long time. It's really amazing what they can do for your firm. So you won't want to miss that. Kelly Steckles, she's going to come and talk about making communication count in this new normal. And then 5 important takeaways from studying 500 plus architecture firm websites, Brian McCartney. It's going to be very interesting. It's something I'm very passionate about. It's about how websites in this industry all look the same. So I'm glad that Brian's going to bring some of that to us. Ownership transition related topics. The 2% of conversation with young professionals principals is going to be great, because as we cited yesterday in the Elevate Symposium, only 2% of firm owners in this industry are less than 40 years old. It's astounding what tremendous benefit and energy that generation 40 and younger has to bring to the table, and giving them ownership, or them being able to buy ownership, the investment horizon that they've got and the wealth they can create. It's very empowering. Then we're going to talk about ESOPs, various phases of it. Is employee ownership right for your firm? Ed Reniger, another partner there with SES ESOP strategies. And then Pat from Wintrust is going to talk about the ESOP alternative. He's also going to speak in our Principals Academy. So we're very excited about that. Or actually, we're going to have a whole separate session on that that we'll talk about here shortly. So really good stuff if you're interested in ownership transition. Leadership is the #1 most requested topic when we do our follow-up surveys from Elevate AEC. And so we've got 4 offerings here. As you can see, we're going to start out today there with Michael Brown. He's going to follow my talk here. And then June Jewell, results focused, bottom up. Pete Atherton is also actually going to be speaking today at 1 p.m. And then Chris Simon, creating a life-work balance in today's work environment. So good stuff on leadership you won't want to miss. Strategic planning, one of our keynotes, Phil Bernstein, is going to be speaking on Wednesday, the 28th. We're excited about what he's bringing. He's going to be talking about some of our research and just some of the work he's doing at the Yale School of Architecture. And then emerging shifts leaders are making to adapt strategy during market uncertainty. Our partnership with On Strategy, very excited, Wednesday, November 11th. You won't want to miss that. Another very important topic, governance and board of director issues. So we're going to have best practices for board of directors with our very own Mark Zweig, who's got more experience in the industry than anybody at this. So we're very excited about that. Purpose and performance. The NV5 team, our #1 hot firm, is going to talk about their diversity and inclusion program and how it drives their culture and performance. And obviously it drives performance. Publicly traded and #1 hot firm for, I believe now, 3rd year in a row. Risk management, we're going to talk about, we're going to get an update on AEC insurance from Daniel Britt and IMA. Again, this is something very interesting because things are changing here. Just think about how risk is changing in a world of COVID. We're going to talk more about data. Can't get enough data. Data insights from Zweig Group's research team, Tyler Thompson's Christy Zweig. And then as yesterday, I spoke about Dawson Fairchow's talk about the research and design tax credit. You will not want to miss this. Again, most people qualify for this, and it's money that goes straight to your bottom line. Growth, we're going to talk about how we built this. Panel discussion, the growth mindset, very excited about that on October 15th. And then finally, Bill McConnell is going to deliver his keynote, Embrace the Chaos. Had a great keynote last year. I know a lot of people are excited to have him back on the speaker slate this year. So looking forward to that. The Elevate Symposium, it's got 5 weeks from the 5 cohorts starting next Wednesday. You can see those here. Again, go to the website. This is free, and most of what I just talked about is all free. So go to the website, make sure that you get your coworkers to sign up for these things. And then those of you who are signed up for or interested in the premium experience, we're doing our M&A Next symposium. That starts on October 22nd, and that runs for several weeks. And then we've got leadership roundtables that start Monday. We've got 3 different groups, as you can see here. Those will also run for 4 Mondays in a row, 2 hours apiece for 8 hours of leadership roundtables and discussions. We've also got the Principals Academy, Zweig Group's flagship seminar, runs for 6 weeks at 2 hours each, so a total of 12 continuing education credits that you can claim on this, every subject in managing an AEC firm. I'm going to be doing my Elevating Doer Sellers business development seminar starting on October 26th, and that is also for 4 weeks in a row. I'm going to be co-teaching with the retired CEO and #1 best firm to work for several years in a row, #2 this year, Garver. Leadership skills for AEC professionals. Again, that topic that is most requested. This is going to be a several session seminar with continuing education credits. We're also got project management for AEC professionals. Very excited about our partnership with Start to Rise there. And then ownership transition strategies is going to be a 2-session virtual seminar that goes in depth on ownership transition and ESOPs. And Patrick Stoltz with Wintrust is our partner on that, so we're excited about that. And then a new seminar that I'm developing right now is actually called Building a Strong AEC Brand Through Employee Experience. I'll be co-speaking with Laura Nick, who is with Garver, and also Client Savvy will be with us on that as a sponsored session. So a lot, obviously, to take in there, but a lot to offer, something for everyone in the Elevate AEC experience. So I am going to sign off here, and then I will be welcoming Michael Brown, CEO of Insight Leadership Group. And I'm just going to say real quickly, Michael got me back on my bike after 10 years. And so he is a husband, father, leadership practitioner, author, entrepreneur, church planner, many, many skills. He develops customized leadership and training programs and curriculum for senior level leadership with a specific specialty in balancing that personal and professional life. Obviously, he's very successful if he got me back on my bike after 10 years. And so he is going to speak on the art of relational and results-focused leadership. So we are going to sign off here. And if you'd like to join Michael's session, then you need to click the link, which I hope is maybe in the chat, or you've already got it on your calendar. If not, please join us here in just a few moments for Michael's Art of Relational and Results-Focused Leadership.